you made a better, more usable version of SAP than SAP did. And this is what I've loved since day one, because let's be honest, like real talk for all of well, everybody out there, whether you like SAP or hate SAP, we all can agree that the interfaces look like they were designed in the 1990s. They're really hard to use, very kludgy, and there's absolutely, even if I love SAP, there's nothing they can do to fix that. You're never going to get the current generation of consumer facing technology, whether it's iPhone or TikTok or YouTube or Instagram. You're never going to get that level of customization and intelligence into a transactional system like SAP.
Thanks so much for joining another edition of The Never-Ending Climb for Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement. Joining me again today, we have the great pleasure of welcoming back Dr. Elouise Epstein. Dr. Elouise, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
I am really intrigued because there are companies out there that are putting the "we're AI native now" on products that maybe there's some questions. What are you seeing? And is AI native, what does it mean now? Does it mean anything?
I have such an aversion to buzzwords and overused words. And part of my brain just I love words and I love hearing a new word or just taking a word like I was thinking about the word hegemony earlier and hegemonic and like I love the way it sounds. And so when you get something like AI or blockchain or AI native and it's just boom, 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 just you're just inundated with it. Like that really it hurts my ears, I will say, and my eyes to boot. So I have a natural aversion to it. And I don't think I'm alone because when you scroll your LinkedIn feed or your news feed or your whatever algorithm of choice or platform of choice, as to say, then you're just getting inundated with this stuff all the time. Or vendors come into your office all day and say, hey, we got an AI native platform or this. So, and nobody really can articulate what AI native is. My take is that you've built something net new from scratch with one of the frontier models and are taking advantage of these really powerful AI tools. And so that's to me AI native. And let's just be honest, the legacy source to pay providers don't have it. Almost all of the point solutions that were so prevalent in Gen 3.0 of the ProcureTech evolution don't have it. Adding some agents isn't going to cut it. So that's a long-winded response to just say that, not really buying it.
I think you're echoing the same sentiment as quite a few procurement and IT leaders that are being told that the new thing from someone that, maybe it's either, made by a company with a blue anvil or next to it that, whatever their new version or their new iteration of it is going to be the thing. You talk to a lot of CPOs and IT leaders. What are you seeing and hearing? How real does that feel?
None of that matters. Like everything I just said in that long-winded response, most CPOs couldn't even, and this is not a knock on them, it's a knock on all the messaging and all the just trash or slop, as the kids call it, that's out there. It's just half-ass marketing messages. So much of it is it's just like this regurgitation or this word vomit of buzzwords. And I just can't stand it. But actually, it doesn't matter what I think. Most CPOs and leaders and IT folks are just so skeptical about this. And so the natural inclination is to retreat. And so that makes the sales cycles harder and they take longer as well. And so it just is self-defeating. And yet if you scroll LinkedIn, it's hard to be a vendor in this space and not be talking about being agentic or AI native or having a agentic builder or whatever. Like, and if you take a step back architecturally, a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense. And so, and a lot of my work is working with CPOs and helping them to, and their teams, helping them understand architecturally how to plug all this stuff in and think about it. And so, what is lost in the din of expository vomit is the fact that we have to decide what our architecture is and how the stuff connects and integrates.
I think that sense of architecture is really underweighted. And the
Oh my
idea,
God, it's the bane of my existence.
I think, because, well, the marketing brochures would often say, we put out something recently on LinkedIn to poke fun at this of, we're AI native. Great. Does that mean that you integrate with SAP? Well, we're AI native. So that means,
Oh
so
yeah, I saw
no,
this.
right? And, I think about the customers that we've met that have tried something that looked really cool in a demo, but then couldn't speak Japanese.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is one of those, start to feel a little bit like a broken record, but how do you articulate that? Like, why does that matter so much? Why is that so fundamental? Because I know that there's folks out there going, but it's so cool, the demo looks great. And then you go, well, can you integrate to SAP? Oh, if it has an API, we're good. Well, like ECC doesn't have APIs. And, S4 doesn't have all the ones that you might need. So now what?
Yeah, so first off, let's just take a little detour here. So I apologize, I'm gonna get on a soapbox here. But first of all of these agents are almost all sitting in a SaaS platform, sitting in the cloud, making use of a one of the public frontier models. There are so many architectural problems with that because if I'm big mega corporation, I don't want, like, I have a fear, justified or not, I have a fear that my data is going into all these public models, even if they are privately, paid for. There's still this like fear. And then why am I putting my data out into a SaaS environment? And so I think I'm not thinking, I know we're witnessing a shift of, okay, it was one thing to put the data out in the cloud or into the public cloud and a SaaS software, like my co-host Sarah Scudder, who works for an IT asset management software, like that makes sense. Like you can have that in the cloud or whatever. It's not like the end of the world, but there's a difference then when you have AI that's acting upon that. And so now I think there's this real pushback of, no, you know what, you can build all the agents, we want them in our environment so that the data does not leave and I think there's a recognition that AI not only is this great analyzer of data and interpreter and reasoner of data, but it's also can execute. As IT teams and AI teams start to realize, oh no, we're not putting our stuff out into an AI agent in the cloud. So there's going to be this gravitational pull back to the enterprise. And that's going to be the real delineator between AI native and quote unquote and whatever else is being offered out there. And then to your point, if we build on that just sort of architecturally, we have to start with and again, a lot of my work is just creating a procurement architecture that establishes one layer is the ERP, one layer is the data lake, one layer is the AI platform. That is, all three of those are owned by IT, housed within the firewall and, within the four walls, as it were, quote unquote. And then we have a procurement platform and all of the bespoke capabilities. Some you'll build, some you'll buy. That's another debate. But that's how we have to think about this. And then, of course, establishing who the different user archetypes are. So when you have that discussion, then we're not like the AI native means nothing in that discussion. It really means how well does your procurement platform connect or leverage my internal AI platform, my internal data lake, and my SAP layer. And that's where, and it's not easy. I'm not like, there's no magic button, it's complicated. But if we're not having these
It is.
discussions, we're just going to be another module in SAP that doesn't work.
There's a reputation. Um,
A
what
well earned reputation, I would add.
I think there's an opportunity for organizations that have lots of ERPs to consider what those integration layers all look like, how we weave those together, how we make that work. I know too that there's a lot of organizations out there that have SAP as a primary ERP, and maybe they have another ERP or two somewhere else. That's cool. But one of the things that I know you and I have been able to iterate on is some of the evolution of where our product has come into it. And I know there's some things that you like about it, and you have some strong feelings of what SAP should just do. I'd love to think about what is it about the approach that we've taken that fits what you think good looks like.
You made a better, more usable version of SAP than SAP did. And this is what I've loved since day one, because let's be honest, like real talk for all of well, everybody out there, whether you like SAP or hate SAP, we all can agree that the interfaces look like they were designed in the 1990s. They're really hard to use, very kludgy, and there's absolutely, even if I love SAP, there's nothing they can do to fix that. You're never going to get the current generation of consumer facing technology, whether it's iPhone or TikTok or YouTube or Instagram. You're never going to get that level of customization and intelligence into a transactional system like SAP. And I'll even be nice to them and say, I don't even expect it. And because that's not their job is to ensure the data integrity of all the deterministic operations that we need to do so that if there's a 98 items in stock, we know that those 98 items are genuinely in stock. Now, if SAP could focus on doing that and getting that right, we'd all be happy. So don't tell me that because you can do that transactional and deterministic stuff, that all of a sudden then you have the perfect user interface and experience. You don't. And again, I'll be fair and say you don't have to have it. And this is where I think what you've done is brilliant, is you just come on the top and over the top and said, oh yeah, I'm just going to plug into SAP and make it usable. And I think that's, again, I'm not throwing shade at SAP, or maybe I am, but it is not really, that's just sort of collateral. Is the fact is you've done something very entrepreneurial and what I think is brilliant, because you're taking an existing entrenched system that is hard to use and you're making it usable. And I love that. What's not to love about that?
It's easier to get adoption when it's easier to use. I still admire the engineering that went into the deterministic engine that's at
Sure.
that core. And I
And
admire
appreciate it
the
for what it
yeah,
is.
the strategy that went in, like I have deep admiration and respect for that engine, especially at a time when the idea of a single vendor master was not even within the imagination of a lot of organizations when they were designing it. I think the part that I find catches a lot of organizations is where do you put a contract in SAP? Well, unless you buy one of the other modules that they bought, you don't really have a good
Right.
home for it. You can put an outline agreement, but there's only so much room in there. And then when you want to run sourcing events, there's an RFQ, but we might need a little more richness. And then, how do you weave that through procure to pay? The engine is amazing at procure to pay, but then you need something to help automate the invoices and make, service entry and field tickets and, ASNs and the collaboration internally, externally. I feel like these are the things where this beautiful piece of engineering for running a manufacturing company was expanded out across these other industries. I still admire that, but I also still believe that there is a large addressable market for customers that don't just want to buy from a single vendor, but rather they're looking for ways to go make that easier and layer on the automation. And there's something that I think we touched on, this kind of bring your own AI, right? Being
Yeah.
creating the ability for an organization to have their own AIs. There's a lot of large organizations that are now hosting their own large language models
Mhm.
and being able to leverage that as part of the processing. Right now, I'm seeing that as being a differentiator that some folks have really admired. I also feel really strongly that the acquisitions that SAP made over the years have just never actually been fully
Huh.
integrated.
Huh.
And uh, I,
Oh, I could tell you some stories.
right? These are the parts where, you know, if you're going to buy the stuff, you got to do the work, right? But it's convenient to not restructure
Yeah.
things. And I feel like this is where the architecture really matters because I know that um, there's some vendors out there that'll try to say, oh, that's okay, we can integrate with SAP. A year and $2 million later, they're still figuring out how to get purchase requisitions created with the right account assignments. And that's awkward for anybody that put their neck out for an investment like that. And I know that that's not where the practitioners out there are trying to put themselves.
Well, I think what's missing, again, we can give SAP credit, begrudgingly perhaps, for creating that transactional system. But you even pointed out that what happens when you have multiple ERP systems, you no longer have a single vendor master. So the core of the problem is complexity
Yeah.
that nobody solved. And so it's like so we have to start architecturally. And then you're going to have an enterprise-wide AI layer. So bring your own AI model. That's coming to all enterprise systems, whether you
Yeah.
want it or not. And just because SAP does some partnership with Anthropic, it's like, great. I don't care because ultimately I want to use my Claude environment or my OpenAI environment or ChatGPT environment or Gemini environment. And that's like, so we need to when we talk about the AI layer, we have to separate that out from SAP.
Yeah.
Their sales reps aren't going to want to hear that, but there's 100 reasons why that has to be true. And so that intelligence layer cannot sit within SAP. It was never there to begin with, but it certainly is not going to be there now.
I think one of the other things that has very much been on my mind is how on my iPhone I can now run large language models that are, granted, not nearly as large as the frontier ones, but several billion parameters to do some genuine work. And I think this is one of those pieces where that AI layer is being distributed and
Yeah.
shared and moving to a place where anybody listening, I would hope that they are thinking about managing vendor lock-in and managing vendor concentration risk, because this is one of those times where being able to manage those calls, being able to manage your tokens, it's not just managing compute anymore, it's managing compute and tokens. And there's several different ways to do that. All right, we're going to run out of time if we keep going down this one.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing. And so as I do master classes. I'm doing a lot more teaching of AI to, well, people over 40. But one of the
Right.
things, the key concepts, and it gets back to this architecture, each of us as individuals need to think about having our own personal AI infrastructure or architecture. And so it's not using Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini. It's Claude and ChatGPT and Gemini and
Yeah.
Gamma and Obsidian and this and that. And so this is going to get it'll get more complicated and fragmented before it gets more consolidated. And I think that'll take a while for that consolidation to happen because one model's not good enough. I love Claude, and guess what? I keep running through
Yeah.
my limits and my token limits, and to say nothing
Yeah.
of the cost. And then when I want to do like really sophisticated imaging, I'm going to Nano Banana and increasingly ChatGPT. So
Yeah.
like it's not one or the other; it's all of them.
It's yeah. I'll make a
Yeah,
call for, in several years, we're going to be talking not about which frontier model you're using, but when you call which, and many of the
yeah,
calls are done on your own laptop or your own device. And I think that's
Oh,
one of the
that's
pieces
we're
that,
already there. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I,
That's why I
pro,
think this data center thing is just it's a little overblown and pearl clutchy.
quite. We would run out of time, and it is always a pleasure, Dr. Eloise, to talk to you. There's probably a thought on your mind that you would want somebody watching this, either in procurement or supply chain or IT. What would you want to leave them with that they would remember 6 weeks from now if they remember nothing else of what we talked about?
I think that AI literacy for each of us as individuals, and I'll admit there's a bias there, but I think the more literate we become, especially those of us over 40 in AI, the better our jobs are going to be. So even if you're negotiating, even if you're just a buyer, there are plenty of nuances in how we contract tools that have AI in them. That some of them could be physical devices, some of them could be just software, but this intersection of understanding how AI is kind of embedded in our lives so that almost all products and services that we contract for have this much more reliance on AI. So we have to be better consumers of AI. And then there's just our personal lives. And if you have kids, how are your kids interacting with it? So it's incumbent, like the most important thing is just keep learning and keep extending your literacy with AI because it's all moving so fast and it's couldn't be any more important to just understand it. And then for those of you that are going to get into politics, please understand it because we need a lot more regulation and understanding from our lawmakers on how this stuff works.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to help govern and guide something that one does not understand.
Exactly.
Said every director in a boardroom. Dr. Eloise, thank you so very much for taking some time out. Appreciate the work that you do to help the
Yeah.
community. I can't wait to see, what you're able to share with the community in the coming year because I know there are a lot of people that look up to you for where things are going and what to pay attention to. So thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And for all of you watching, here's another edition of the special edition of The Never Ending Climb for Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement.